Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Mystic Games. Today we're going to be talking about Warcraft Rumble. We're going to be talking Horde minis. We did Alliance last time. We're going to start with leadership, then go to spells, and then go to minis in general. I think that's the best way to go about it to help people getting started in the game. I switched up my screen a little bit. I added blockers because it's just easier than readjusting my whole screen, so you guys don't see my, all my taskbar and stuff. Anyways, we're going to start with Karen Bloodhoof. So, Karen Bloodhoof is a tank. He costs 5 gold. He does an AoE strike in front of him. And he has pretty good health, but he doesn't have armored, so he does take additional, well, it does not additional. He doesn't take reduced damage by elemental or physical attacks. So although he has a good amount of health, he is also not super tanky comparatively to someone with armor or resistance. His best talent is Reincarnation, which is when he dies, he comes back at 50% health. Essentially just gives him whatever his health is. He has 150% health, essentially. It also allows him to not be targeted for a second. He also has moves faster, and then he also has, after he hits somebody, he kind of stuns them, and then he gives them a daze for 5 seconds. But Reincarnation is definitely the best. Generally, when you're running Karen Bloodhoof as your leader, he's solid, but you're going to probably want to give him a healer like the Frostwolf Shaman, or some type of support that can deal a good amount of damage behind him. He's good at controlling enemies, melee enemies on the ground. He can't hit air. Overall solid leader. The one thing I will say about the whole Horde roster of leaders, they're very similar in the role they play. I would say Karen is probably the most tanky of them, and he has the most control against ground enemies. But overall, that's pretty much his role in your army. So that's Karen for you. Let's talk about Grom next. Grom is my favorite. If I were to give a rating to the 3 leaders here, Gromosh is my favorite leader. He's cheaper, which having cheaper minis is always nice. He serves a similar purpose to Karen and Sneed, because they're all kind of tanky melee attackers. He has a little bit less health than Karen, but he only hits 1 target. But he gives everyone around him Bloodlust. So all your other minis get an attack speed and attack move bonus. So arguably I think Grom is the strongest because he buffs up your whole army and he's the cheaper of the leaders. They essentially gain a 33% movement speed and attack speed when Grom is on the field and they're around him. My favorite thing with him is Savage Strikes, which is he deals double damage to things below 50% health. A lot of people do like the mirror image that he summons 2 additional images of himself. A lot of people like that one. They say it's really good. And then you have Blade Storm, which he AoE Blade Spin ability, everything around him. Most people don't recommend that one. If you're going to go that route, you might as well be going Karen. So normally you're going to want to go Savage Strikes or Mirror Image. I prefer Savage Strikes. Everything below 50% health just gets melted. And he just buffs up everyone around him. Grom can buff himself if there's another Grom. So 2 Groms can actually give each other Bloodlust, by the way. Bloodlust itself does not stack, though. But Grom is my favorite leader out of the Horde leaders. But he's just a single target heavy hitter. So if you need a single target melee heavy hitter that does physical damage, Grom is your guy. If you want to spread that damage out, it's Karen. Next we're going to talk about Sneed. Now Sneed's very weird to me. So he's like a AoE striker. He has armored, so he is able to take more physical damage than the other 2. But he overall has less health. He does do good damage against towers. He's essentially a siege unit. That's kind of what he's made for, and he gives you gold, additional gold when you destroy towers and you open chests or you capture towers and meeting stones. So he's a good way of generating gold. Sneed is my least favorite of the leaders, although he does have very good uses in certain PvE modes. In certain raids, it's very good to get the extra gold, and he allows that. Plus, he is relatively tanky, and he does an AoE. That being said, anyone with elemental damage just melts Sneed, and he just dies. That's why I'm not a big fan. My favorite is Gromosh, and then probably Karen, and then probably Sneed. That's just my personal opinion, though. Sneed's best talent, in my opinion, too, is Lead with Greed, which you get additional +2 gold when he triggers his ability. So essentially, instead of getting 2 gold for everything I just said, you get 4 gold. Minor Trait is a good backup as well. So next we're going to talk about spells. I like to talk about spells before I talk about the other minis, because I think spells play a significant role in this game, and you normally always want probably one spell in your deck, if not more. But one is pretty much very, very strong to have, generally to have at least one good spell. Chain Lightning is a very interesting spell. It's a very cheap spell. It only costs 2 gold, as you guys can see up here. The gold cost is right on right above the image there on the top right corner. It's very cheap, so it's a cycle. It's a very cheap. Boom, you drop it. It does a decent amount of damage. Has an okay radius, and then it deals elemental damage, so it's good against armored. And yeah, it's just a solid thing. It bounces around, hits everybody, and it serves to take out like smaller squad minis. That's kind of the purpose of Chain Lightning, and it's also just a cheap cost mini. A lot of people like to use Reverberation, which allows you to drop 2, which will cost you obviously 4 gold. I like Brilliant Flash, which stuns our enemies for 1 second, because then it makes it a little bit more useful for non-squad minis as well, as you can control the map. And then there's Storm's Reach, which just increases the jump radius, which that doesn't make much sense to me. It's either probably Reverberation, which I think a lot of people more like Reverberation than Brilliant Flash. I prefer Brilliant Flash to stun bigger enemies for a second. Sometimes a second can change a match. It's a solid spell. Execute is 3 gold, and what it does is it pretty much deals % health on the target, 50%, and then depending on their level to your level, it goes down or up by 5%. So if you hit something the same level, it does 50% health. If you hit something that is a level under you, it does 55% health, and if it's above you, it will do 45% health. Very confusing, I know, but Execute's one of the strongest spells in the game. It's used in so many like PvE and in so many PvP decks. It's just extremely good. The most useful talent for Execute is usually Bloodthirsty. It bloodlusts all your allies within it for 10 seconds. So generally your melee units will get it, and then you'll be damaging the enemies greatly. And then you have Overpower, which knocks back enemies. Not super good. And then you have Killing Spree. If an enemy is killed, the next Horde mini costs 1 less. Generally, people use Bloodthirsty, I see, with Execute. That seems to be the most used. But Execute is a very strong spell. It's used to just chip a lot of health away very quickly. So if you're facing a boss, you just drop it on a boss, and it will chip away a lot of health normally. So yeah, it's a solid spell. If you don't know what spell to use, Execute's a good one. That being said, we're going to talk about all the minis. Horde has relatively good minis. I like a lot of them. Some people would probably disagree with this, but I think they have probably some of the best in the game right now. Bat Rider's solid. It's a cycle mini. It's cheap. It hits an AoE area. It counters so many things. It's just a solid unit. I rate Bat Rider pretty highly. It does elemental damage. That damage hits the ground and makes a area effect. Enchanted Vials increases the size of the fire. You have another one that reduces speed for enemies to enter the fire, and then you have one that just, they drop a vial behind them, and then it burns the enemy. Most people use Enchanted Vial, which is the one that increases the size of the fire. Essentially, if you have that and you throw it down on any, like, normally melee mini, what ends up happening is the melee mini will get whatever ranged units are behind it will start on fire as well, and sometimes they won't even make it to you. So the Bat Rider can essentially clear ranged units sometimes without even having to get in range or have potential of getting killed. Or at least it usually trades where it walks into the fire and then it has enough range to hit the Bat Rider, and then the Bat Rider dies. But Bat Rider's a solid Horde mini. Next is the Darkspear Troll. The Darkspear Troll is a 3-cost mini. He's cheap. He has 2 good abilities. He has Big Bad Voodoo, which regenerates, and then he has Serpent Sting, which adds poison, and then which are my 2 favorite. And then Headhunting on kill, he increases his attack and movement speed by 10%. That goes up to 50%. I don't see Headhunting being that great, but I think most people use Big Bad Voodoo, which is the healing one, and then Serpent Sting I like to use as my backup because just adding poison stacks is pretty strong in this game generally. Normally against, in PvE anyways, poison is pretty powerful. So overall, Darkspear is pretty strong. He's just a low-cost mini that you drop behind one of your tanky, leaders you have here, and he'll do some work. He is single target. That's probably the biggest thing that would be his weakness. Next is Frostwolf Shaman. This is one of the best minis in the game and opens up a ton of strategy. It's a healer and it does elemental damage. Mainly you want it because it's a healer. The best talent you can get is Earth Shield. Earth Shield will give a ally armored, so normally you'll drop one of your leaders, which is either Karen or Gromosh. Sneed already has armored, you can't give him armored again. But if you're playing it with one of these 2 decks, you drop Karen and you drop Frostbolt with the armor behind him. He now makes Karen armored, and then walks behind him and heals him as well. If you drop a Darkspear Troll alongside, like the Frostwolf Shaman, generally that will help clear out air units, and you'll have a nice little push going. I'm not even going to talk about the other talents, because generally you almost always use Earth Shield with the Frostwolf Shaman. Giving a target armored is so powerful, and then having this unit just walk behind and fire off heals is even better. Next we're going to talk about the Goblin Zapper. It's a cycle unit, which means it's cheap. It's mainly there to blow up towers. The best trait is probably the one that makes it move twice as fast and gain the fast trait. Extra Boom essentially kind of does the same thing. The only difference is you can use or react to Extra Boom, whereas you might not react to the powered Turbo Boots. So I would say powered Turbo Boots more for PvP, and Extra Boom is probably better in PvE, generally. That being said, it's a solid unit. It just doesn't do anything, but it runs in and just blows up on a tower. If you're able to backdoor a tower with it, it works well. But there are better units. It's really one of those units out of the Horde that I would say is one of the weaker. Out of the 3 that I talked about so far, Bat Rider, Darkspear, and Frostwolf, I'd use them over a Zapper. But next we talk about Ogre Mage. The issue with Ogre Mage is he's expensive. A lot of people don't like Ogre Mage because of his cost. He does have Frost Firebolt, which gives him a AoE slow attack. He also Bloodlusts a target and gives it 33% attack speed and 33% movement speed, which is super strong. He is a solid unit, but a lot of people don't like him. He can also he has a talent where he bloodlusts himself, bloodlusts others. He also has a talent where he starts everything on fire that he hits. So if you're going for more damage, generally probably bloodlusting yourself and bloodlusting an ally is better. If you're going more for control, Frostfire Bolt's fantastic. There's actually a strategy using the Ogre Mage that you can use on Onyxia, that you can use like lower minis and it can actually clear Onyxia because of the Frostfire Bolt with a certain team. Not going to go into that, but Ogre Mage is generally lowly rated, but I do like throwing him in my deck sometimes. He does that nice little niche of just blowing up a whole area. The only thing that I would say does it better is Pyromancer, but generally, when you're looking at him as like a Horde mini, I wouldn't say he's bad. I just think because of his cost, there's better options out there. He kind of serves the same purpose as a Darkspear Troll, except he hits an AoE area. So only when you're fighting something that hitting multiple targets is beneficial, is he really that great? Otherwise, he's okay. Next, we have Stonehoof Tauren. This unit is insane. It can be so good, it can be so bad, but it can be so good. The best trait for the Tauren is when you charge, then you charge again. So essentially, she'll charge just on the base mini, but if you have the talent that she charges again, she'll actually charge a second time and usually hit a backliner and start killing the backline, and that just is super good. She also has one that when she connects with her charge, she stuns. That one's pretty good. And then there's another one where they connect their charge and then she taunts. I would argue that Momentum is probably the best, where you hit 2 targets, because it normally will go to the backline next. And then Pummel is super good as well, because if you're one-on-one, it just stuns the target for 3 seconds. She gets a couple attacks in, and then it unstuns. So it gives the Stonehoof Tauren the advantage in the fight. Solid mini that the Stonehoof Tauren is. The issue is, again, when you're looking at only the Horde minis, you're generally not going to need the Stonehoof Tauren because you already have Grommash, Karen, or Sneed in your deck. So you already kind of have someone to do the tanky attacker role. But because of the second charge, it can work. But generally, you're going to use this in a deck where you might not have another kind of tank soaker person to do damage. Next, we're going to talk about the Warsong Grunts. My favorite one for them is actually Guard Duty, because you can essentially just stack grunts at a base, and then when they get engaged, they'll all just go off and attack together, which can be hilarious. It summons 2 of them when you summon them. A lot of people like Blood Pact, whereas like when the grunt dies, the other grunt gains Bloodlust. I like Guard Duty. I think it's hilarious. Are they a good unit? No. Are they fun? Yes. As I said, I like to drop them with Guard Duty and try to get a couple built up and just see what they can do. But out of all the, if you're going to choose Warsong Grunts or Stonehoof's just generally going to be better for you. And now we're down to the last 2. We're looking at the Warsong Raider here. The Warsong Raider is fast, and she's made for hitting towers. The best trait for her is generally Sundering Armor. The first time she hits a target, it will remove their armor. This can be super strong against anyone that has armored, because then it makes them so they take full damage from physical damage. She does double damage against towers, and she moves fast. So she's kind of like a more expensive Goblin Zapper. Generally, the Warsong Raider can solo a tower as long as the player or the computer doesn't defend it. The issue is if they defend it, it will counter it, and it can't really do much. Again, very niche role. If you're facing something that you like in PvE, for example, there is a couple bosses that dropped a lot of armored units. It's kind of the thing for, I think there's in part of the raids that we have currently, there's someone that does that. In that situation, Warsong Raider could be good because it could just start taking armored off of targets and helping you clear them quicker. But because she's single target and it doesn't do an AoE armor sundering, it's not that strong. It's really good for one-on-ones. Finally, we have the Witch Doctor. Last but very much not the least. The Witch Doctor is probably one of the best new minis that has come out recently. It's not super new at this point. I think it's a couple months old, but it's a cycle mini, so its cost is low. It doesn't deal a ton of damage, but it kind of shoots out a beam in a cast and deals elemental damage, so it's strong versus armored, and it just costs no money, so it's easy to get out. The best trait is when you kill something with the beam on it, it grants shield to all nearby allies, just giving them 1 free hit where they take 0 damage. This is so strong. I've actually had this go off and execute, or a spells went off, and it's blocked the damage of a spell just completely, and it's insane. The other one that you could use for talents is Amplify Curse. That's kind of it causes when you kill an enemy, it explodes. And then if those enemies die, they explode. So it's like a chain reaction kind of thing. The issue is, again, he doesn't deal a lot of damage. You mainly want him to just target whatever the rest of your team's targeting, use Spirit Ward, have it die, and then get the shield for all your allies. This allows you to do a nice push. And also, if you're you have him with the Frostwolf Shaman, and we'll say Grommash are in the lead, and he's your helper support, he'll give you the shield, which gives the shaman more time to heal up Gromosh a couple more times. And then he just has a better chance of surviving in a push. Anyways, I think Witch Doctor's a pretty solid unit. This is my quick rundown of Horde minis. Next we're going to talk about, I want to say it's Blackrock in the game. I'm trying to go in game order here. I hope this helps some new players, but you guys can always look at my tier list if you're actually looking at specific like minis where you think they want to, you know, should be placed. I have made a tier list on all the minis. The only one that I'm missing at this point would be Ysara, because she's newer, which I do like Ysara. And we will get to her when we get to the Cenarian minis. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoy. Later.